In these series of videos, we're going to talk about putting and the different options for you to experiment with and try out. Putting has the most variance of any other aspect of the game when you look at players on tour. You can see players doing all different types of styles and setups and strokes, and there's a lot of different ways to be successful. Therefore, in this conversation, we're going to start with talking about the fundamentals, both in the setup and in your stroke. Then we will move on to talk about different styles that you can experiment with and try out with. And then we will finish with green reading and how to think about that. And really the goal of this conversation is to help you with the 3 skills of putting, which are to be able to start the ball on line, to be able to control your speed, and to be able to read the green. When we talk about fundamentals in putting, I mentioned there's a lot of variance among putters out there on tour, but if we look at the greats, there are really 4 things that they all do and they have in common when they putt well. And the first one is going to be that the arms hang loosely from their shoulders. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I just get into a nice golf posture here and I just let my arms hang, and then I bring my hands together in whichever grip I use, which we'll go through here shortly, I just let my arms hang. I'm not forcing them out or inside the plane. I just let them hang and then I bring my hands together. That is the number 1 fundamental. The second one is being able to see their line in a posture that works for them. And there's a lot of different ways that you can set up to a putt, and I'm not going to tell you what's right for you. There is a drill that I have here that will show you what's best for you. So what you'll do is you'll get a stick that I just have an alignment rod here, and you put it on a pretty straightish putt of about 6 feet. And then you're going to set up to that with your putter and however you grip the club. And the goal here is to experiment with how tall you want to stand, how bent over you want to stand, how you need to tilt your head to the right, to the left. And the purpose is out of that peripheral vision to see this stick as straight. For example, I stand pretty tall and I have to tilt my head slightly to the right, and that is when I see that line as straight. There's other players that have to be much more bent over than me, or they actually would tilt their head in a different direction. But really encourage you to try this drill, and it's important to continue to come back to this because it might change. Your fundamentals can change through time. I know I come back to this drill every couple of months to make sure I'm in the proper posture. Now, the third fundamental is having the shaft of our putter running up through our forearms, having them on the same plane. Now, that's going to be different than in a full swing. In a full swing, we talked about a good grip would be having the grip going through your fingers. And when I do that, what you can see is if you draw a line through my shaft and a line through my forearms, they're in 2 different planes, and the arms would actually intersect with the shaft line. So we want it all to be in the same. How do we do that? Well, we need to have the grip more in our lifelines or more in the palm of our hands. So as you can see here, if we drew a line, the shaft and the forearms are all in line. No matter what grip that you use, it's really important to have that, to be able to use your muscles and be able to control that club face. And lastly is just be athletic when you putt. And what I mean by that is stay in motion. You think about a basketball player shooting a free throw. They're staying in motion, they're staying loose as they shoot. It's the same thing in putting. I see way too many players, and I fall victim to this as well, where we get static over the ball. We don't continue to move, stay athletic. So really important when you're standing over the ball to be tapping your feet, moving your hands, moving up, forward press, whatever it might be, but stay in motion until you move into your stroke. So those are the 4 main setup fundamentals that we see from all great putters. Now we've covered the fundamentals of the setup. We're now going to talk about the fundamentals that go into the actual stroke of the putt. Most important takeaway here is that the face is king. The face is much more important in putting than it is in the full swing, and it is going to dictate where that ball starts when you putt. So extremely important to have a good, solid grip, a good face awareness to be able to understand where that face is and start that ball on line where you're looking. Moving on, we're going to talk about the path of the stroke. And if we think about a putter, how it's built, it's on an inclined angle, an inclined plane here. So some people will talk about the perfect path should be straight back and straight through. But if you're doing that, you would be fighting physics as this is on that angle. So really you want a nice slight arc to the inside going back and a slight arc to the inside going through. Now the amount of arc that you have is going to vary based on your setup, based on your makeup as a person, but there is going to need to be a nice small arc to the inside on the way backstroke and on the through stroke. Lastly, we'll talk about tempo. When we think about tempo, we want it to be 2-to-1. We want it to be equal on the way back and the way through. When I see players struggle, there's going to be a big disparity to that tempo on the backstroke to the through stroke. Sometimes it's slow to fast, or it's fast to slow. We want it to be very the same on the way back and the way through. So we're kind of matching up that backstroke to that follow through stroke on the way through. So those are the three main fundamentals when it comes to the stroke. But like I said at the beginning, the face is king. Don't forget that, and don't get too bogged down in your path. But we do have some great drills that we're going to go through to help you with that path, to encourage you to start that ball online. Now let's talk about some drills to help your path. I mentioned the importance of the face angle and starting the ball online, but having a proper path will make that even easier. So a drill that I've set up here to work on your path is a favorite of Jordan Spieth and many other players on tour, but it's very simple. We're just going to take what I have as an alignment rod here. You can also use a golf club. You're going to set it down on a fairly straight putt of about 8 feet. You can put a ball just inside it, and you're going to line up with your putter parallel to that stick. So we're working on alignment, we're working on path and face all in once in this one drill. And we're going to set up our putter up against it. And from here, we're just going to practice hitting some putts to where we arc the putter slightly to the inside going back, so the putter will move a little bit to the inside of that stick on the way back, and then we're going to match it up on the way through. And a way to self-diagnose what's going on with your path, and I do this all the time with my friends, is if you have them grab their iPhone video, that's all you need, and as you're doing this drill, they could come stand next to you either from down the line or face on, and they're just going to video your stroke from up top. You are just going to be doing this drill as best you can, where you line up, where you have the putter parallel to that stick, and you're just going to work on a slight arc in on the way back and a slight arc in on the way through. And what you can see in that video is whether you have a good path. We want that putter tracking on the exact same path on the way back and on the way through. But what you're probably going to see is a loop in the stroke. All of us have a tendency to have a slight loop in our stroke. You're either going to be looping up over the plane or under the plane. And really easy drill, if you do notice that you are having a loop, is what I'm going to show you next. So let's say you are seeing a loop where you're coming out over it and you're striking the ball on the heel. Really easy drill to fix that is we're actually just going to set up intentionally with the ball on the heel. And then we're going to hit the putt from the center. So we're going to have to feel the opposite loop that we've been seeing in the video. But if you do that about 5 times, don't overdo it, because we don't want to then ingrain that loop into the stroke. But what it's going to teach your brain is to do the opposite of what you are doing. Now, if you see the opposite, if you see that you're looping under too much, we're going to do the opposite, which would be we're going to set up with that ball on the toe, and then we're going to intentionally loop the other way to where we then hit it in the center. Same thing, do that about 5 times and continue to monitor it, because things can change. This game is constantly evolving, constantly changing. So really great drill to have your friend video your stroke, I'd say once every few weeks. And lastly, just a good maintenance drill for you if you don't have someone nearby to check the path of your stroke, is just what we would call the pause drill. So you're going to do this exact same drill. All we're going to do is after we take our backstroke, we're just going to pause for about a second, and then we're going to work our way through. It's really difficult to have any type of loop when we have a pause in our stroke. So I'll demonstrate here. All we're going to do is take everything's the same, good setup, and we're going to take it back, count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, and we're going to go ahead and putt the way through. Great drill to really start any practice session. Moving on, we're going to talk about different putting styles that you can experiment with and try out. And this is the fun part. But I will say, in my career, I've probably experimented with every putting style under the sun, probably to my detriment. So I would encourage you to experiment with these in the beginning of your stages of development, but really try to find a style that feels most comfortable and works for you, and stick with it, because I personally have not done a great job of that in my career, and I know it has been to my detriment. So first of all, let's just start with the conventional style. Now, I will note in all of these styles, it's important to go back to our first video where we talked about the proper fundamentals in setup. And that drill where we see that straight line with our vision, that is going to dictate how your body should set up, whether you're bent over more, whether you're standing a little taller, how your head is tilted, which direction. So make sure you focus on that drill first to determine how your body should be set up before you experiment with these different putting styles. Now, when we talk about the conventional grip, that is the one that I have landed on that works best for me. But when we think about it, it's a little different than the full swing grip. Full swing, super important to get the club in our fingers, diagonally through our fingers, because we're generating hinge and we're generating speed. But in putting, we want to have control of the face like we've talked about. And the way that we can do that is make sure that we have the shaft in what's called the lifelines, or more the palm of our hand. So as opposed to the putter going through diagonally our fingers, we're going to have it diagonally through our palms. That way, when we turn her to the side here, we're going to see that same angle through our forearms and our shaft. And with that normal conventional grip, really what most players on tour, the most popular way to use it is what's called a reverse overlap grip. So we're going to have our trail hand below our lead hand, and then we're going to take this lead pointer finger and point it down our trail hand. This is used by Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, a lot of great putters. But you can also do overlap, interlock. You can really use whatever feels most comfortable for you. But this has been really shown as the most effective for a conventional grip in controlling that club face. Now, if you feel that conventional grip doesn't feel great to you, you don't have good control of the face, you could then move on to try some alternatives. And the first one that people will move to is cross-handed or lead hand low. And the idea there is we still want to keep the club shaft in the lifeline of our hands, but that lead hand is going to be below our trail hand. And you can also experiment with a lot of different ways that you want. You could do baseball grip where your hands are apart. You can do reverse overlap, as you can see here as I take my trail pointer finger and point it down, interlock, overlap. But the idea is that that lead hand is lower than your trail hand, and it has a lot of benefits here. It's going to level out your shoulders, which is a great thing. It's a lot of people struggle with getting their trail shoulder low in that conventional grip. So really experiment with that, see if that works for you. Another grip that I've seen work with some players on tour is just putting our hands together, or what would be called a prayer grip. You can either kind of take like your pointer fingers, like you're pointing, or even make it a gun with both of your hands, and then you put them together here as well. That would be a prayer grip. It's not used by as many players on tour, but it really is physically a great way to hold the putter. So something definitely worth experimenting with. And lastly, with styles with the short putter, has really become popular in recent years, which would be the claw or the saw grip. And the idea there is our lead hand stays on the putter very similarly to we would have in the conventional grip, but we're going to take our trail hand and we're going to put it on the bottom there in the form of a claw or a saw. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. I would just focus on whatever feels comfortable for you. Now, I know when I putted with this, what felt good to me is putting 3 fingers on top, and then I would have this pinky finger almost pushing into the shaft here. That's one way to try it. You could also do a saw where you only have 1 finger on top and the other fingers on the side. Now, really important fundamental with this grip, if you are going to try it, is to make sure that your wrist stays flat. We don't want there to be any massive angle here, because when we have our wrist flat, if we have any type of hitch in our trail hand, which is typically why people go to the claw, if we have any type of hitch, as long as we keep this trail wrist flat, it's not going to affect the face at all. It might add a little bit of loft to the putter, but it's not going to affect the face, and the ball will still start on line. So those are the options for styles with a short putter. And next we're going to talk about some styles with a longer putter. There's some additional styles that you can experiment with in putting that go beyond just the short putter. But it's extremely important if you are going to try these styles to get fit with a PGA professional, because these are going to be specialty type strokes and you need to make sure that you have a putter that matches up the proper length, lie, and loft. And really the most popular style in recent years that's come about, really Brinson DeChambeau has started this trend, which would be the arm lock. And the idea with arm lock is we're going to take the shaft and we're going to run it up against our lead arm. And that is going to take basically all of the hands out and focus just on your big muscles when you putt. And if you do arm lock, you can really have the same variance in putting styles or grips that we had with the short putter. You could do left hand low, you could do conventional, you could do claw or even saw grip. All of those are potential options. I will say, having experimented with arm lock in my career, I think it can be very viable, great way to putt. I will say, do not try to use your hands at all when you putt this way. It's very important to use your big muscles and make sure your hands stay completely out of the stroke. Another putting style that's also really helped some bigger players. I know in this past season, Lucas Glover really went on a tear with this, and that would be the broomstick style. And that would be a similar putter, but it's going to be longer. This is an arm lock putter that I have here, but it's going to be longer. And the idea is you're going to be wielding it like a broomstick. Now, it's very important to make sure you're not anchoring it against your body, as that was outlawed a few years ago, but also could be an interesting way to putt. Now, if you're going to experiment with this style of putting, the fundamental I would say there is you're going to have your lead elbow here. It's going to feel awkward, but you need to make sure that lead elbow is sticking out, and it is going to be parallel to the path that you're trying to putt on. And then from there, you're still just putting with your chest. But really make sure you get that lead elbow out parallel to your stroke. That's going to help keep that path and that face going in the proper direction. And lastly, would just be a counterbalance putter. And it's going to be just a longer putter, very similar length to this one, but it's going to have weight at the top. And that is just going to help you use your bigger muscles, but you're still going to grip it in any of the styles that we talked about earlier with a short putter. You're just going to be using a more mid-length style putter with weight in the top. Ricky Fowler has started using a counterbalance putter in the last couple of years. It's really spurred his comeback, so could be definitely a putting style worth trying. But like I said, experiment with all of these styles that we've gone through, but really focus on one that feels the best for you and commit to it moving forward. The idea here is we want to help it with those three fundamentals we talked about earlier, which is starting the ball in line, controlling speed, and green reading, which is what we're going to get into next. The last piece to the puzzle here is green reading, and it is often overlooked. I know personally I've overlooked green reading and didn't understand its importance. There'll be times when I'm not putting well and I go to my putting style, or I go to my putter that I'm using and I blame it on that, when really you have to understand green reading is extremely important, as every green's different and the slopes are going to vary from course to course and from hole to hole. When we talk about the fundamentals of green reading, you are either going to be more scientific based in how you read the greens, or you're going to be more feel based. I know I've played with both types of players on tour. Sometimes players will walk on and be able to just feel every slope in the green just from their senses. And there'll be other players like a Brinson DeChambeau that is a little bit more scientific about it. Regardless of which way you are either going to be what is called a linear putter or a non-linear putter. Everyone falls into one of those two categories. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you are a linear putter, it means you see straight lines and you are picking an aim point when you putt. So every putt that you hit is straight, and you are just moving that aim point based on where you feel that putt is going to break towards. The other way would be a non-linear putter, and that is if you see curved lines and you don't see straight lines. You see curved lines and you see areas of where the ball is going to roll through. You pick areas of the hole that you want it to enter into. Personally, I am a non-linear putter where I see curves. However, I still pick aim points. I just see curves off of those aim points. So really important to experiment with both to see whether you are a linear or non-linear putter. Now, moving forward in how we read the greens, regardless if you're going to be more scientific or you're going to be more feel-oriented, the biggest mistake I see players make is they don't start reading the greens soon enough. It starts the second you hit your second shot into the green. As you're walking up to the green or you're driving up to the green, extremely important that you're assessing the whole situation. You're looking at the green, you have great vantage points when you're walking up to see, okay, where does everything fall off towards? What do the mounds look like? Where does it look like the drainage is gonna go towards? That is gonna give you a really good baseline that sometimes you'll be distorted when you're actually on the green. Now first, let's start with that feel-based putter and how you read the green. And really the idea here is it is feel-based, but you want to tilt the odds in your favor of getting that read correct. And how we do that is by making sure we read the putt behind the ball, so we're bending down behind the ball, and then we walk to the other side behind the hole. The entire time we're walking and looking and sensing in our feet and our eyes, okay, what do I see here? What do I feel here? It's also really good, Tiger Woods has done this, to go at about halfway through the putt or 1/3 of the way to the hole and just take some practice strokes above your line, the intended line that you're seeing, to get an understanding of what you think the putt is going to do. I will say typically as a field putter, your first gut reaction of what you think the putt will do is going to be right the majority of the time. So when you walk up, that first thing that hits you after you've been reading the green, walking up and feeling, typically you want to trust that. If you're talking yourself out of a read, more often than not, you are going to be incorrect. So really make sure you're using all of your senses and giving yourself that best chance to really feel that correct line. Now, if you're more that scientific green reader, really AimPoint has been the best tool that has come out in recent years. And you've seen a lot of great players implement this and really change the game for them. Max Homa is a great example. In the past couple of years, he has implemented AimPoint Express, and it has really helped him in his green reading. And we're going to go through a separate video here where we talk about just the main fundamentals that go into AimPoint Express that I think can be really helpful for you. But we encourage you to take a full lesson in AimPoint with a certified AimPoint instructor, or send us a video if you want to get some more in-depth information. Lastly, let's talk about AimPoint Express, which has been extremely popular among players on tour in recent years. I know Max Homa is that name that comes to mind, which really helped his game. And let's talk about the fundamentals of AimPoint Express. And it can seem overwhelming, but it's actually very simple. And it is really where the science and feel of putting come together. And how we practice it is we just want to be able to understand and feel different slopes with our feet. That's where we begin to practice AimPoint Express. And how do we do that? Well, first thing is we're going to just get out to a putting green and we're going to grab a digital level. Fortunately, in this day and age, we could just download one from the App Store, which is what I have here. And then we're just going to place the phone on different slopes on the green, set it down to see. So this is showing just under a 2% slope. And then we're going to stand with our feet about hip distance apart, close our eyes and kind of feel what that feels like. So I feel a little more pressure in my left foot as the slope goes a little this way. So then I know I need to kind of lean a little more to the right to feel level. What you can do is you can move around the green and put the level down, see what the slope is, and then feel it in your feet. The next step would be to test yourself. So then you go to a slope, feel it in your feet, guess what you think the slope is, and then put the level down. And from there, that will give you a really good way to learn how to feel slope and not feel dependent upon that digital level. So what does this mean? How do we then translate that into a putt? So this is a 2% slope. And what that means is, so let's say I'm putting towards the camera and here's my ball. If I stand behind my ball about feet hip distance apart, about a foot behind the ball, if I hold up 2 fingers and I close my non-dominant eye and I cover up the hole with with my left pointer finger, what the edge of my right middle finger is going to be my aim point. Now, the only other factor we have here is how far I hold my hands from my fingers from my face. And that will determine or be based upon the speed of the green. So the faster the green, the closer our hands are to our face. The slower the green, the further they are from our face. And the reason for that is when greens are faster, the ball will break more. And if they're slower, they're going to break less. So really important to understand that distinction. And how we calibrate or determine how far we hold our hands from our face is going to depend on each day. So if you start doing AimPoint, I encourage you to just pick a 10-foot putt like this. If it's at whatever percentage it is with your digital slope, stand behind the ball and guess where you think the speed should be. If it feels about average or about normal, hold it about a foot from your face. And then practice with that specific aim point with good speed. Maybe it's too much break, maybe it's not enough break. And then you can calibrate and determine whether you need to use your hands closer or further from your face. But once you get it dialed in for that specific day, remember that distance from your face, and that will be where you hold your fingers throughout the round. So this is a great way to really use both science and feel in your putting, and it's actually a lot simpler than you think when you see it on TV. There are some nuances when you think about a double breaking putt or things of that nature, but feel free to take a lesson from your certified AimPoint instructor or reach out to us to help us with some of those nuances. But I really hope this helps you in your green reading when you're out there playing your best.